An
What
action.
is my hot take today? An action. Got a slight cold. This is high production right here. I've got a new strip light so you can see a slight blue tint.
Very
because
fancy.
because the sun is shining through there, you can't actually see it. Waste of protection.
It's nice that you have sun. It's absolutely like chucking it down here, but
yeah, I think it's coming through the clouds. So my hot take, I guess it's, so for context, I came up with an idea about 3 days ago of creating a products page. So we are a service-based company. We are building projects in the background that are products. And I was thinking of a way with my marketing brain, how do we promote them to get people to potentially test them, and then we can see if we could just straight launch them and sell them or subscribe the products out to people, so sort of different apps or books or whatever. So I doodled an idea. Up here, it looks like a great idea in this brain or heart or whatever you get your ideas from. Doodle it. I was like, actually, that's not too shabby. And then you put it into Figma. You actually design it. Okay, I know it's the bare bones, and you're like, this is shit. So I guess the question or the hot take is bringing your expectation, but then you hit what is the word? You have a sober mind when you hit the idea, the basic idea, in a design format, and it doesn't look as well as you thought it would in draft one. So I guess my question is, maybe in the creative world, because you've been more in this creative atmosphere, and to help all the creators out there, how do you, I guess, not make it knock your motivation, and how do you ride the wave into draft 2, 3, 4? Or the other question, I'll let you pick. How do you have realistic expectations on design? Because I'm sure you've had clients that have had unrealistic expectations.
All right, let's hit the first one. So it's super funny, and I know exactly what you mean, right? So it's super relatable. So the first one to me, let me take you back to The Simpsons. The Simpsons has been going for ages, right? The first drawing of the Simpsons characters were awful, right? They were rough. And then the latest version, so if you Google Bart Simpson or the development of Bart Simpson right now, you will see a picture of back when they were in the 90s, maybe, of it being like very rough. And then you'll see a picture of him in the 2022, like, or 2020s. And it's like this well-polished machine. Now, basically, the second one, the most recent current version, does not exist without the first iteration. So you have to have that first iteration, the one that potentially you might be embarrassed about. You need that one as a stake in the ground to iterate to the perfection that's in your mind, or to another kind of area, because it might be that your mind is just the jumping point, and actually it's just the starting idea, and it will change over time, like in front of your eyes. And then in front of your eyes, the thing in front of your eyes is a bit different, but in itself is good and nice. So I've always thought that the Bart Simpson, or the Simpsons in general, is a great example of like the power of iteration and the power of like starting somewhere. So I mentioned last week about the book, right? I've now released it, so it's on Amazon Kindle, and I'm in the process of doing it as a hardcover book. But interestingly, or a softcover book, you have to have 24 pages, which I didn't know. So the Kindle can be any number of pages, but the physical book has to be minimum 24 pages.
Amazon?
Yeah, so this is through Amazon doing all the publishing or like the creating the physical book. So I'm like, oh, I have to basically come up with extra pages. But
I've got an idea for them. I don't know if we should put it on the podcast.
Oh yeah, we might as well. What would be your idea? Because I've already basically solved it to some degree. So, but yeah, you tell me your thing.
Right at the top of each page, continue this story and let the person draw the next bit.
This is exactly what I was thinking. So rather than continue the story, which is one thread, what I was thinking is reinforcing the learning by, so the title of the book is Try New Things. So what you could have is like a hangman style, the words, but the word try has R and Y dropped from it as page one. Then you flick over and then new has the 2 letters dropped from it. And then third page has things with the letters dropped from it. And then, like Dad mentioned, actually what you could do is duplicate the entire story again, but with words dropped out to basically get the person to kind of put the missing word into the sentence that was missing. So it's kind of like a quiz, because people like quizzes rather than tests. Psychologically, people like prefer that word. So you could rejig the whole thing out with a missing word or whatever, or you write it all with the missing photo and you get them to draw it. So,
or you can make it bilingual.
Oh yeah, now we go to Welsh.
Flip it round. Yeah, but no, you can flip it round. So then you'd have one side as Welsh and one side as English.
Actually, that would be super fascinating. And then the cover could be upside down. The only thing is the cover would have a barcode on the back. So you'd want it to kind of not look too weird. But yeah.
Unless you incorporated the barcode in both designs, front and back, so it doesn't matter. The barcode is like a part of the tree or something.
Yeah.
As the bar.
If it was on the front and on the back, then it would be good.
It'd be the bark code.
I think
dad joke.
I like the. It's fine. We're not going to cut it. I don't mind dad jokes. I like the idea of it being English and Welsh in one book, because then that encourages people to like just try it. Like they might never have like tried a book in Welsh, and they have the kind of quote unquote answers by flipping it and going to the same page. So I think that'd be a really cool idea. My only reservation is that I want it to be a Welsh book and searchable by being a Welsh book, because you can only set one language in a book, or at least I think you can only set one language. But yeah, maybe that's something that I'm trying. So I'm currently working on the soft cover version of it to see what that looks like. And the reason why I wanted to bring that in is because my first iteration is literally line drawings and sentences. So each page is broadly like a short sentence and a conceptual line drawing. Now, it's funny because people would be embarrassed to show this version, right? And I'm like, I've kind of like removed the embarrassment, just because it's just one opinion of somebody else, or just many opinions. And those opinions do not pay your bills. They do not control your kind of like inner satisfaction of doing something. And they do not understand I'm very aware of iteration. So this is not the end product. This is just the first iteration. So like the next versions can always be improved. So I would say it's all about kind of a baseline mindset of iteration is fundamental to everything. And that is, we exist in a world where iteration has been used. Like the plane, the first version of the plane was never flying. It didn't fly. But over time, as they iterated and corrected things and adjusted things and innovated and stuff, it then actually began to fly. Now, the planes that we see now are completely different to the first plane we see. So we live in a world where iteration already happens. We just don't see it because we always see the finished product. But what's nice is there's a movement of people, and specifically on Twitter, that have this like build in public mentality, which is they're showing the iteration. They're showing the good things, the bad things, and the process of it. Like my designs don't look great in the first iteration because it's kind of pottery, right? It's literally a lump of clay and there's nothing to it. And then it starts molding, and really there's no form until kind of like a few seconds just before it kind of like is great. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a process in that, and then slowly you start to see the shape forming of it as it's spiraling around, like spinning around, and then it gets its form. So I think for me, iteration is fundamental to the process. Therefore, the first version is not the finished version, and the first version is not the last version. So, and also, you need to start somewhere. you need to start with something, because nobody works well with a blank page. So if you put something on a page, then that's a great starting point, really.
So let's say you've took that starter. I'm just reminded of the is it like a Red Bull thing where people like try and build their own paper plane type of cardboard plane, wooden
and
plane,
jump
and
off
then
that hill, yeah.
yeah.
Jump off the high
So
rise.
so let's say you're creative enough to get V1, and you jump off the cliff, you slam the floor. How do you, or information that you've heard, help you get up to then create V2 or carry on or have a laugh or take it on the chin? Because let's say you've talked about iterations for people that struggle to get anything done. So let's say for the people that have done one thing, but now it's like the fear of failure or the perfectionism kicking in to be like, actually, this is pretty poor. How do you get the confidence in it's okay, this is part of the process or whatever?
Yeah, so I'm reminded of Myers-Briggs, right? Myers-Briggs is two female doctors, I think they were, Mrs. Briggs or Miss Briggs and Miss or Mrs. Myers. They basically came up with a way to categorize the individuals that were left after like most people go to war. And so you can categorize people, broadly speaking, and then utilize them in different workforces and different workplaces, so the UK could carry on functioning as a country while a lot of the population were over in war. The specific letter, so it's made of 4 letters. The second letter is N or S. So you do this quiz and you get the outcome is these 4 letters. So the N is like intuition, right? Is it intuition, or to me, I always think of N as like big picture, or like dreaming and kind of like a large scale. And then S is a little bit more like detail, step by step. So if you wanted to categorize that from like a person perspective, an N might be typically someone more like an army general, and then a S is someone typically more so like a soldier, like step by step kind of thing. So I would be like, take that as the idea. Basically, what happens at the end of V1, you get like stuck with this idea of like fearful for the next version. Is the next version going to be as good? And I'm like, if you're in the S version, which is basically like, what's the next step? Or I'm fearful to do the next step. The best thing is to flip from the small picture thinking to big picture thinking, which suggests that this is like, you're going to do this competition like 5 times. So you have like 5 versions of this to go. So like this one now like doesn't matter because you've got 5 to go. So the best kind of like example of that would be like a music artist, right? With Kim and stuff with music. She might feel like, oh, it's a bit difficult on this track, or I'm trying to finish this track and it's a bit hard. And sometimes I'm like, well, literally over your lifetime, you're going to release 1,000+ tracks. So this one is just one of many, which then ultimately switches the brain from trying to get perfection to be like, yeah, you're right. There's a lightness to it. There's this big picture idea of this is literally just one jigsaw piece in a large jigsaw, rather than this is the jigsaw, like the final piece, or the piece that has to work and there's no negotiation. So I think it's switching from the small picture to big picture to kind of help you realize that this is like one of many. Like, we can't exist on one client. So if that one client doesn't like what we do, that's fine, because business never runs on one sale, on one client, on one product. It relies on many products, many clients, many sales. So it's always a game of numbers. So I think that's, broadly speaking, how I apply it. And like secondary to that, there's this like vision, this visualization of what the future looks like, and it feels good. And that's kind of gives you this sense of hope and kind of anticipation for what you're walking towards, metaphorically speaking, or headed towards. So if you have a real strong visual brain and you can like imagine in a visual way that outcome, then the ups and downs of a moment doesn't affect you so deeply, because the outcome is that you want to, design something or build something or create something or feel something or, have a particular lifestyle or something. So if that inspiration kind of gives you the energy and the patience and the kind of the let's get up again, like dust yourself off. Yes, of course it hurts because we're all emotional beings, but dust yourself off because the goal is like this mountain that we're walking to the top of. And of course, when you get to that mountain, a lot of the time, there's actually another peak, like that. It's changed as well, right? There's another mountain that's actually a bit higher, and that's actually a bit more refined to what you really, really want, as well. So just to recap, I would say initially it's literally forgotten how to recap. Initially it's iterations, then it's big picture, little picture, with remembering you've got thousands of these to output. So don't get caught up in this first one, because you're going somewhere that builds like hope and anticipation, which gives you the energy to keep going and do number 2, do number 3, do number 4. So yeah, I would say that stuff.
Sounds good and interesting for sure. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add.
It's really like what stops you from putting out. Well, actually, yeah. What stops you from putting out? Yeah. What stops you is like fear, right? A lot of the time, it's fear, because you think that somebody's going to laugh at you, somebody's going to think that it's rubbish, like, and again, they're 100%, because in your own life, there are foods that you like, and there are foods that you don't like. There are films that you like. There are films that you don't like. In your own life, you are freely kind of like going with like a positive and negative take, or like things you like and don't like. So to think that something that you create, 100% of the people, 100% of the time are going to like it is not plausible. So you basically break down the fear by agreeing and acknowledging that it's likely that there is a percentage of people that won't like this thing, and that's fine. And it's a case of like, go and find all the people that do like the thing. But if you can reel it back, so that's if you need the external validation or external encouragement. If you can reel it back a bit, broadly speaking, the reason why I release something and somebody else would be embarrassed to release that exact same thing. So for example, my Life's Journeys, which is the kind of the IP product, and the first episode of Trying New Things, out now. If someone saw that, they might be super embarrassed. Now, what I love is the fact that I did it not for the response. I literally did it because I know that that's the first stake in the ground, ready for the 100th version of this IP, of the iteration of the character, of the 100th episode that's going to be aired in a very much like a Simpsons kind of way. So my vision is 100 episodes of Life's Journeys, or Teithei Bywyd, like 100 episodes. So why am I getting upset that this version is not quite right when I have 100 episodes to go? What I also like, so I'm doing it mainly because I've got 1,000, so I need to get going somewhere about the execution of that and the consistency of that. The second thing is like, I like showing people because basically I want them, and especially if they're illustrators or they have this skill, I want them to feel annoyed that Dan over here that would on paper not be labeled an illustrator, and on paper not be labeled a writer or anything like that, was able to get this book out while I've been sat here trying to find the right idea. And I have the skills. I am an illustrator, or I am a writer,
It's like those adverts of those like app store games, and they always die in a very easy way. So you get annoyed and you're like, I can do that. That's way easy. I'm like, no, I'm not going to download it. I'm not going to fall for it.
I've downloaded so many games because of the exact same thing. And I know it's happening. And I'm like, oh, that looks just like fun to do. And yes, it is annoying that this person's failing. Now, I'm kind of like exactly doing that thing. And I'm not doing it just because the baseline reason is I've got 100 episodes. So this is my first one, right? Just getting it out there. And then the second like benefit of that is like, I really hope that this irritates a bunch of people into action because of the audacity in which I conduct myself, to think that now I literally can put in my Twitter bio, author, illustrator. Like, do you know what I mean? Now, given, yes, I have some drawing skills. When I was a kid, I used to run a card business that was illustrations. Yes, but I wouldn't say that I'm an illustrator. But again, that's also, I'm choosing not to label myself because I'm not as good as others, but actually I do have drawing skills. Like I was around my nephew's place a couple of weeks back, and they're all drawing. Two boys were all drawing, and I was like, cool, I'll draw with them. And I started drawing superheroes, and because they were drawing superheroes and stuff. And then they realized, hang on a minute, Uncle Dan can draw, and Uncle Dan can draw really well. So they were like, oh, can you draw Miles Morales? Oh, can you draw the Hulk? Oh, can you draw Iron Man? And I was literally just drawing characters for them and then getting them to color them in. So I do recognize there is a baseline kind of like talent, a little bit of a talent, but I'm not great at drawing faces and stuff like that. So you have to like play to what you know and what you do. So going back to the percentage of people that I'm going to annoy, I hope, and let's just say for argument's sake, 80% of those people are basically people that are going to be annoyed and literally turn around to their partner or friend to be like, look at the craziness and how awful this comic is, or this like little book. Look how bad it is, right? And they will have the skills. They'll be an illustrator or an artist or a storyteller or a writer or something, and they will literally not do anything about it. And they have 0 books in the Kindle store right now, right? And those 80%, I'm not so bothered about those 80%. Let's say if it is 80%, I'm bothered about the 20%. The 20% of people that will see the audacity in which I have published my own Kindle book with outlined drawings and a decent story and be like, heck, I'm going to figure out how to do that for myself. Do you know what I mean? I'm looking forward for those people to be like, the audacity at which Dan Ryland was able to put together this comic book, this thing, as his one of 100 episodes. Why don't I do the exact same thing? So like that super excites me.
And I guess whilst you were speaking, I was thinking the people that have probably got the most fear of others rejecting them or saying it's rubbish, they probably have those thoughts about their own work more than people outside of their brain and heart. So the thing that you're fearing, you're probably living with that person inside you. So it doesn't matter what other people think.
Yeah, you're your greatest critic.
I like yours at school.
Gatekeeper. It reminds me, what's that drink that like milkshake drink? Is it yo-yo or yolk or yazoo? Oh, I don't know. Anyway.
Yazoo. I like how you said yolk as if it's yolk and then milk put together. Yolk.
Maybe it's the sound that you do when you drink this drink, so you should call it yolk. Yolk it down. Actually, that's a good tagline. Yolk it down. Can't remember what I was saying.
So you're basically doing a middle finger to all the creatives that should be doing their own work, and they're like, yes. "Fuck you! I'm going to do the middle finger to you by doing it better." And you'll be like, "Ha, you had to buy my thing."
Yeah, I hope that you download it enough to be like, "Oh, the audacity of this!" Enough to create your own better version. Like you'll naturally be better straight away. And this is it. Like you've got 100 episodes to go too, so don't worry. Like it's just a game of kind of like consistency. Yeah, you're your own biggest critic, and you're your biggest gatekeeper. And a lot of the time, the things you won't put out in public typically are good enough because there's a baseline understanding of like, let's say you're like above average at something. Let's say you're above average at something. Typically, you won't put it out there because you think it needs to be great. You know, perfection is the absolute killer of progress, which is just funny. Like, it's funny. So last night, I shared this book with some friends and I just loved their reaction to it. They were like happy, but I also feel like I kind of like got a little bit of the like, yeah, I'm out here doing this crazy stuff like to inspire people. and I hope it inspired them. One thing that it inspired them to share was they've basically started a YouTube channel of recording themselves or their kids playing with toys, because there is a trend on YouTube, and I need to follow this up. There's a trend on YouTube of videos of kids playing with toys that people will watch because your child that you have in the room, of course, is more interested in seeing other kids play with toys than themselves playing with toys, which I found was fascinating. So they're building a YouTube channel of just videoing like playing with toys and stuff, right? And I was like, that's a great idea. So people watch it in the same way, you know how
So it's like Twitch, but for kids, basically.
Yeah.
You're watching other people game, but
Yeah.
physical game.
Exactly, and they're playing with toys and stuff, and it must be just like the interest in like that. Oh, what toys are they playing with? I was like, okay, so you're filming this like train, and you're going down this loop, and you're
Call it Twitch R Us.
Yeah, Twitch R Us. Well, on the top of that, I was like, this train. Chances are you bought this train off Amazon, or you can find it on Amazon, so you should put them as referral links. Because if kids are watching these videos of other kids playing with toys, and they're like, Mum, Dad, I want that toy over there, the parent or guardian or whoever can buy that toy through an Amazon referral link. And then you could be making money on literally filming your own kids play with toys, publish it online, get a bunch of other kids watching it, and then get Amazon referral links. And then buying those toys, because typically, we're coming around Christmas season, might be the parents want to figure out what toys to buy, I think that's a great point. And then you'd be like, hey, Toys R Us, we have this YouTube channel with 1,000 followers or whatever, 1,000 subscribers. Would you want to give us free toys to play with them and add them as referral links and things? I'm like, what an absolute, like, when you hear an idea that I could not have physically come up with, I could not have generated that out of my own like dome. And then someone shares it with me. I'm like, the finesse is so clever. Like I'm so happy when someone finds an absolute niche that they fit super easily into, So I thought it was great. And filming your kids playing with toys, like, that's nothing. There's no perfection in that. You're not going to tell your kid, hey, you played with it incorrectly. The train needs to go forwards, not backwards. You don't care, right? It's just about getting it out there in a way to build this kind of like empire, which is basically sipping pina coladas in Hawaii, because these videos are basically making you passive income because they're being watched by kids all over the world and purchasing stuff through Amazon. I thought it was such a beautiful idea of like, of course, it makes sense. I wish I'd thought of that. And that is the irritation. Now, I'm not going to buy a bunch of toys and record it out of, I'm not that 20% in this case, and the 80%. But I'm like, no, it's like, that's great. Like, awesome. The cake is absolutely big enough for everybody. It's not a few and little and only. Like, the cake is absolutely big enough for everybody. So I thought that was such a great idea. So if you're listening to this and you have kids, literally start filming them playing with toys, or start playing with their toys and filming it and putting it on YouTube, and get Amazon referral links and attach them to the toys that you're playing with. And then once you build up 1,000 or X amount, start emailing local toy companies to be like, hey, we've got this following. Do you want to give us some toys and we can publish it? Same way you have these unwrapping videos, right? Or like unboxing, sorry.
I was just imagining, like, if you're recording with toys and then your kids get in a fight, and then you could just have like a paid wall as if you're about to watch some boxing.
Yeah, pay now for my child A and child B type of fight. And of course, you can keep it all safe. You don't have to film their faces. You can just film their hands, right? So even from a safeguarding kind of position, you can have it all anonymous. You don't need to be called like the Ryland family plays with toys or anything like that. It can all be literally anonymous, and you have this like this thing. I thought it was so fascinating. I love those moments when someone shares an idea that is like, I couldn't have come up with it myself, and it makes absolute sense for them, and they're like doing it, and I can see the vision of that idea working out. So my like brain starts like firing off with a bunch of ideas, really. So
nice. So as we come to the end, what should we call this podcast, so people can see the process of how we come up with these ideas?
It should be like, basically we should say that titles are always difficult, right? In YouTube,
the creative pathway through mud.
Yeah, the creative struggle. I think it'd be like, you've got to do the whole, like, don't tell them what it is, but like insinuate or like suggest what it is. So you've got to be like, the one fundamental rule to success, or the one fundamental rule to creativity, or the one fundamental rule to successful output, or something like that. And then they'll watch it and be like, playing with toys? And then like, no. You've got to have some anticipation. It's interesting. On we also, like Tom said before, there is so much more we could be doing with this podcast to kind of like get it out there and iterate and have every sentence like chopped out and stuff like that. But we're just like going with it. And I think it's fascinating that some of the titles, like when we talk about purpose or legacy, those titles like really resonate more, which I think is fascinating. And what was great, like,
so find your purpose in the creative world.
Yeah,
by building a legacy.
Legacy, purpose, find it here. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, you have to do the buzzwords to actually have someone click on it or have someone watch it or listen to it and stuff. And I think it's funny, like we've had our first piece of feedback off the back of this podcast. One of which is, my Bali trip was super relatable in a sarcastic way. And the second one of which is like, all of this content.
I love it how you said, we've had the first comment and then you said two comments.
Oh, yeah.
The irony.
Yeah. But the first person, as in like, that was like a ha ha ha. Yes. Okay, cool. The first person to give us feedback is basically laughing at my ability to forget famous people. My ability to forget famous people like Rogan, Josh, and Turtleneck, which is what we'll now call them from now on. And the fact that all this content is just making them think and reflect on their own opportunities and their own potential. And that made me absolutely buzz, because if this is anything to those like 20% of people that will listen to this and just like self-reflect and think like, could there be something more to my situation and my environment, my work situation, my non-work situation, you know, to have something a little bit better. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it. Just thinking about it is enough of a satisfaction for us to keep doing this stuff. But we're going to keep doing it regardless of whether or not it does land or doesn't land, because this is episode 1 of 10,000. And this is just creating the bank of information for us not to be well known, but for us to be known well, right? So for us not to be well known, but for us to be known well. So
that's a good ending.
Iterate, people. Iterate. Bye.